Given the fact that it is an infringement upon the fundamental right of privacy that has been enunciated by the Supreme Court, it will lead mass disenfranchisement.
We are forgetting that Aadhaar was only meant to be a proof of residence. It is not a proof of citizenship.
This government is taking away the autonomy of the Election Commission.
Despite the opposition raising objections, the bill seeking to link your Aadhaar card with your voter ID was pushed through the Lok Sabha on December 20th. What is the Union government's reasoning behind this bill?
Election reforms bill.
Law Minister Kiran Rijiju said that it will remove bogus voters from the electoral roll. Those supporting the bill also claim that it will bring about transparency and convenience in the election process. Basically, it will make life easy for those voters who move to a new town, allowing for a smooth shifting of their names from the voter list. So why have opposition leaders, legal experts and activists opposed the move to link the Aadhaar card with the voter ID? What are their main objections? I spoke with Apar Gupta, a lawyer and the executive director at the Internet Freedom Foundation, to explain this. But first, a quick reminder that stories like this take time, effort and resources. We cannot do this without your support. So do become a member of the News Minute community by clicking on the link in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, firstly, what is the Election Laws Amendment Bill all about? So it allows the electoral registration officer to seek the Aadhaar number of persons who want to vote or those who are already in the electoral rolls. It basically establishes the identity of the person and apparently to ensure the person isn't in the electoral roll in more than one constituency. There are many serious concerns over the move, including that will lead to many people being struck off the electoral rolls. In fact, there are real-world examples of mass disenfranchisement from Telangana and Andhra after Aadhaar cards were linked to voter IDs in the 2018 state elections.
Let's first understand Aadhaar is not a proof of the right to vote. Your electoral registration in the roll and your voter ID card is the basis on which you vote. Secondly, Aadhaar, by the Aadhaar Act itself, is not a document which attests to a person's citizenship. Hence, what is the purpose of linking Aadhaar is something we need to question, right? So the purpose which is stated is that it will now purify rolls. So one, we have established it is not the proof of citizenship. So what is the basis of it now being linked to the right to vote, which is tied with the person's citizenship? It is actually one database which is designed for a very different purpose, being linked to a database which is designed for the right to vote. One which is based on citizenship, one which is based on residency. Secondly, now, even if we presume that the Aadhaar database will in some way, even contradicting this basic fundamental flaw, result in a cleanup, this will not take place for the mere reason that this is not the first time the central government has introduced this kind of linking program. In fact, it launched the National Election Roll Purification and Authentication Program called NERAP during the Aadhaar challenge, and the Supreme Court had passed an interim order restraining it on August 11th, 2015. However, certain state elections through the state election commissions have attempted this, and what has this resulted in? For instance, in 2018, the Chief Electoral Office of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh linked Aadhaar data with voter ID cards. So this resulted in at least 50 lakh voters being arbitrarily disenfranchised. They were not sent notices prior to their names being taken out of the electoral rolls. They only got to know when they went to the election booth and said that they want to cast their vote, and they discovered their names are not there. And it was only after public outrage this was rolled back. And previous attempts to use Aadhaar to clean up databases or other government registries, like for instance for rations under Narega and PDS, have resulted in mass disenfranchisement. Again, these are not assertion by activists. This is being noted in the National Economic Survey of 2018, which notes that there's a authentication failure rate as high as 12%, and it results in exclusion for large numbers of people. Now imagine the impact on elections. If 12% people are excluded from casting their ballots in a constituency, it virtually changes the very result.
There are major concerns that will violate people's privacy and enable voter profiling. What this means is that the ruling party may be able to identify who is likely to vote for them and who against, and as a consequence, use welfare schemes to either reward them or punish them.
The second main cluster of objections relate to voter identification, which may be done by political parties on the basis of Aadhaar data. Let us step back and also consider that Aadhaar is a universal unifier which links across a host of government services. So it populates, for instance, databases on subsidies and provisions, LPG, gas, rations, etc., etc. It also links to your bank records, your income tax statements, etc., etc. So if that unifier is also joined with your electoral role to some degree, there will be a greater degree of profiling, because then the electoral database will also start talking to all the other databases. While this is justified on the grounds that it will promote transparency, it will result in a greater aggregation of data, which will inform political parties what are your preferences, what are the government services you use, do you avail any subsidy, and then use you to target and canvass for your vote. In fact, data leakage and usage of Aadhaar is an issue which is being litigated in a PIL before the Madras High Court, where one political party has been accused of using the Aadhaar database to target voters in that state for a state election. In fact, the High Court even has passed strictures and demanded accountability from the UIDAI, which is the regulatory body tasked with looking after Aadhaar.
But the government has said that linking Aadhaar with one's voter ID is totally voluntary. So why is there still so much objection to this move?
Argument of the government that the Aadhaar voter linking is purely voluntary does not stand muster, for the simple reason there is a very low trust in this assertion. And I want to say this honestly, because prior attempts of the government in linking Aadhaar to any service, your mobile phone, your bank, your PAN, or anything, or even your passport, has over a period of time become so onerous, even if it is not mandatory in the sense of it being defined as mandatory under law, it has been mandatory in practice. So voluntary is actually mandatory. And secondly, if one looks at the text of the Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021, then it provides the exemption of Aadhaar to be linked on the basis of other IDs as may be prescribed by the central government based on sufficient cause. Quote unquote, sufficient cause has not been defined within this law. Other IDs have not been defined under this law. The procedure for exemption has not been defined under this law. All of this is left to the discretion of the central government. And the central government, of course, as per its statement in Parliament, has an interest and a motivation towards having every person link their Aadhaar with their voter ID. So what alternatives will be there if they are there? Will be only marginal or illusionary. And I would like to give one practical or tangible example to make it much more evident to people. For instance, especially for metropolitan voters in urban constituencies, Aadhaar linking with voter ID will be facilitated, for instance, online. But if you choose to exercise this option of not linking your Aadhaar with your voter ID, it will require you to go to a regional electoral office or visit a regional electoral officer and submit documents which may be voluminous, which may need to be attested through a notary or through a public officer, etc., etc., thereby making it very onerous and unviable.
So what is the impact of this bill on the people who vote? Some opposition leaders have alleged that the BJP government has passed this bill with an eye on the Uttar Pradesh elections, which is scheduled for 2022. So is there any truth to these allegations?
The impact which will come through the Electoral Laws Amendment 2021 will not be immediate and will not impact the upcoming state elections in close to 5 states in India. It will only have its impact later on, possibly towards the general elections in 2024. This is because that rules under this law need to be formed, and then the process with respect to what is stated to be the objective or deduplication of linking these databases, of requiring people to actually furnish their Aadhaar so it can be linked with the voter ID will be proceeded with. However, at the same point in time, the opposition leaders are correct that this can certainly lead to mass disenfranchisement, which was cited by members of parliament. It could increase voter fraud because the Aadhaar database by itself has been stated to be quite often of a very low quality, with have bogus enrollments, and there's several new stories and instances which documented, and these mass discrepancies in the Aadhaar database even continue till date. Also, it would violate people's right to privacy and the secrecy of vote, as this kind of profiling can also be leaked at a later stage in point in time. So any proposal to link UID with voter IDs as they were canvassing must be rejected. One other concerning thing which comes clear from yesterday's debate in Parliament is that one BJP MP actually has stated that this move will result in removal of has made communally tainted statements by stating that this is a move to remove Bangladeshis and illegal foreigners, and this comes within the larger atmosphere of the CA-NRC. That member of parliament also stated in support of this bill that a lot of bogus enrollments are done in religious establishments, quote unquote madrasas. So one can quite easily see that, quite easily anticipate that the objections which are being made to the passage of this bill, and that too in such a hurry, are actually very legitimate and well grounded.
Beyond these concerns, many in the opposition have also raised objections in the way the bill was just bulldozed through Parliament in less than 30 minutes of it being discussed, with only a voice vote as against a division of votes. So what do you think of this move to link your Aadhaar card with your voter's ID? Do you think that will lead to more transparency, or do you think that it will violate your privacy? Tell us in the comments. Also, don't forget to hit the like button on this video and share it with your friends.